Well, hello there. I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about in this week's video. So, after much consideration, I thought I would ease in to it and start by talking about the books themselves. This will be a whole series of them. There's 8 published books as of right now, and I'm getting ready to publish the next one. So, a brief history, if you will. As I've said before, I've been writing consistently since 1977. Seriously, writing since 1977. And I wasn't in a hurry to send things out. I was writing and writing and writing and trying to get better at the craft of writing. And then, as you will, you start sending out stories. And I have to admit, the first story I sent out was really bad. And it probably deserved all the criticism that it received. But it hurt. It really hurt. You know, as you would expect. Rejection slips always hurt first time around. But eventually, after sending things out, getting rejected, sending things out, getting rejected, I came to a point where, you know, with every rejection slip, it was not anger or frustration or anything like that. It was, your loss. And then, in about, I want to say 2005. Let me just double check that real quick. Yes, 2005. You'll see what I'm referencing in a moment. In 2005, finally managed to get a story published. It was a little story called "With Eyes Open," and unfortunately, it was for no money. But at that point, I really didn't care about that. I was more concerned with I finally got published. I can now on cover letters say I have been published. Not that it helped, because it was. I mean, I did have a couple of other stories published, but again, no money. Yes, there were credits, but they weren't helping. So I decided in 2012 to go about things a little bit differently. To actually take that leap, that final leap, and self-publish. And so I started getting the first book together, and I decided the first book was going to be short. I didn't have any longer works ready to go, so I decided, okay, I'm going to take a couple of stories, I'm going to put them together into one volume, and we'll take it from there. Now, originally it was going to be campfire stories with about 10 stories in it, but I decided to hold off on the big collection, and let's go with a shorter collection first, so that I can get a handle on how difficult it is to actually self-publish. And as it turns out, it's really not that hard at all. It's tedious. There's a lot of things you have to do, a lot of small things you have to pay attention to, so that the text turns out correctly on the screen of the reader's Kindle, Nook, or whatever device they're using. And that first time, it was very frustrating. Making the cover was even worse. But the through it all, came to this. This is the first book, With Eyes Open. Now, there's 2 stories in here. Only 2. The title story, With Eyes Open, and its unintentional sequel, A Voice in the Darkness. The history of both stories is rather interesting because, excuse me, because of how the stories came about and what they actually evolved into. I've been living down here in Florida for almost 21 years now, and I had been stuck for a while. I had a sudden change of location from where I used to live in New Jersey to down here. Was very shocking, and I got a bit stuck in my writing. So I had read somewhere as a writing exercise, if you got stuck, try this as an exercise. Turn the television on, turn to any random channel, write down the first line of dialogue that you hear, and that becomes, and write a story from that line of dialogue. So I figured I got nothing to lose, so I might as well give it a try. So I turned on the television, random channel, wrote down the first line of dialogue that I heard, which was something along the lines of, "Isn't there something you wanted to tell me about your marriage?" And I started writing. And it helped. The exercise helped because I was able to get back on track. And like I usually do, I didn't plan out anything. I just started writing. That line led to a scene in a diner between my main character and the person she had gone a date with. But I had to very soon figure out what the story was going to be about. I'm a seat of the pants writer, a pantser, if you will, even though I'm not crazy about that name. I make it up as I go along as opposed to plotting everything out. I prefer that. It takes me longer. I work slower because I have to stop and figure everything out as I go along. But I think it gives the story a more organic feel, a less plotted out, planned out, A, B, C, D, this is how everything is going to happen. And then I started thinking, do you ever out of the corner of your eye see movement? You turn, there's nothing there, or it's your pet or something, it's a figment of your imagination. I started thinking, though, what if that's actually a person, a creature, if you will, that you can't see if you're not paying attention. If you're consciously trying to see them, you can't see them, but you see them out of the corner of your eye, like a subliminal advertising executive see it for only a second. And then I kind of refined that a little bit to they're not so much that you can only see them when you're not looking at them, but you're not actually supposed to see them at all unless they want you to see them. And so I I found the name Adichas, A-D-I, Adichas, Adityas, from Hindu mythology. I used to get a lot of names from mythology. When we get to on a cold, actually, when we get to campfire stories, I'll talk about a character name. It's my cat over here. Anyway, and I started thinking, what if they are here? We just can't see them, we can't sense them unless they want to be sensed, and they need a human anchor to remain here. Otherwise, they just kind of will fade away and be gone. And I thought, okay, great. And I wrote the story. I came up with the main character. His name is Mira Frayne, and wrote the story of how she became linked with the Adichas. I'm trying not to give out any spoilers here because I do want you to go buy the books. Because while I may not be writing specifically for money, but it would be nice. The story ends 100 years after Mira joins with them. She is at that point still very nervous about it, still uncertain, still does not really want to be have anything to do with them, but that's not her choice right now. And that's where the story ends. Some time passed, and I started working on another story titled A Voice in the Darkness. Again, not plotting things out in advance and having to move slowly. I started thinking about, okay, what if an experiment had gone wrong? A space station kind of blinks out of existence, comes back, and then seems to be passing in and out of reality, if you will. And we figure it, and so that was great. I figured it out from there. Came up with my main character, Mandalay Jones. Don't call her Manda; she doesn't like it. And started writing from there. Now, I refer to A Voice in the Darkness as the unintended sequel to With Eyes Open, mostly because I didn't plan on writing a sequel to With Eyes Open. Then Mira showed up in A Voice in the Darkness. And that's when it became a sequel to With Eyes Open. So it's really not surprising, because that's really how my mind works. I do all my writing subconsciously, and half the time I don't know what I'm writing until I finish writing it. So I figured out then that something to do with the project that was being run on this space station was in some way affecting the Adichas. And then when I figured out that the project could indirectly lead to the Adichas being discovered, and they don't like that, that's kind of pointed me towards the end of the story and how to find my way through that ending. It was still long. I had to put the story down for a while so I can figure out what was happening with it. and figure out the plot line. And so I came up with Mandelay's ex-husband. His name is Matt. And it never occurred to me that all three of my main characters, their names all began with M. Mandalay, Matt, and Mira. Unintentional. I don't. While I do sometimes try and find names that are appropriate to to the characters, or have some kind of meaning, I don't really put too much emphasis on that. I'm merely trying to find a name that'll stand out in the reader's minds and be memorable to them. So it's just a basic overview of the first book, With Eyes Open. It's available on Amazon in print on demand and ebook. Also available for Nook, iTunes, various others that you can find on the website, and the links are there. Also, I'll put the link in the bottom so that you can get to that. I'll take any feedback that you can give me, any comments, good, bad, or indifferent. I do ask, though, that if you do buy a copy of this or any of the other books, please go back and leave me a review, just in case, because it does help drive business to the books, drive attention to the books, I should say. And so yeah, that's it for now. Remember, as we sign off, always remember, we are simultaneously the heroes of our own stories and the villains of someone else's. Take care. Bye.